Hello, this is Russell Bates. In very few of the Star Trek books is much attention ever given to Gene Coon, but he was as much a part of the creative drive behind the original series as anyone else. He was a writing partner and friend of Gene Roddenberry since back in the late 50s, early 60s. They had worked together on the series The Lieutenant, for instance. Gene Coon was an ex-Marine who had served with the Flying Tigers in China. He had been Chesty Puller's aide, and he became a policeman and a writer in Los Angeles about the same time that Gene Roddenberry was also both a policeman and a writer. And the two of them worked together several times. When Star Trek got going, Gene Roddenberry brought in Gene Coon, and Gene Coon's contributions to Star Trek, he invented the Vulcan Nick Pinch, for instance. And many of the various things that Star Trek became were Gene Coon's ideas, but he was more or less like Nikola Tesla. He was not interested in any glory or attention or credit. He just did things and went his way. He wrote several of the best episodes on Star Trek, such as Who Mourns for Adonais, about where they met the Greek god Apollo, and he wrote The Devil in the Dark, where that creature that bores through stone is killing these miners on a planetoid, and many of the really choice episodes.
Aaron DeMercy, he invented the Klingons, I guess.
Yes, yeah. That's right.
Yeah,
He did invent the Klingons. He became my teacher and mentor, and unfortunately, since he smoked these huge, long, big black cigars, in 1973 developed lung cancer, but didn't know. It was a type of cancer that replaces the tissue rather than disrupts it. But of course, since it was lung cancer, it was replacing his lung tissue with tissue that was non-viable. So he fell ill one weekend and entered the hospital with what he thought was pneumonia. They discovered the cancer. They realized he only had just maybe 48 hours to live, and he was sitting in an oxygen tent. Since he and I had worked together years before, he was starting the first video cassette company that would have dramatic and documentary content, and he was going to call me back to Los Angeles to work with him in this company. He was sitting there happy as a bird. Dorothy Fontana was there, Gene Roddenberry was there, Gene's wife was there, saying that he was bringing Russell Bates back to Los Angeles to work with him in his company, and everything was going to get off the ground. He was going to start the first video cassette company. He fell into a coma the following Sunday and passed away in 1973. And I was at the Clarion Workshop in Seattle, and Dorothy Fontana called me and told me, and right then and there, since the patient parasites had been rejected, I decided that I would write an episode in tribute to him, and partially How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth is my tribute to my teacher and friend Gene Coon. I deliberately modeled How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth on his episode of Star Trek Who Mourns for Adonais, where they met the Greek god Apollo. So the Star Trek crew meets the Mayan god Kukulkan, and the stories run parallel a certain distance, and then the other one, my story, becomes its own story. But it was my tribute to my teacher and my friend. That may be one of the reasons also why it did all the things that it did.